Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the greatest there is, the best there was. I refer to him as our hunting Brett the Hitman Hart. I got Jared Shaffer from Tethrd. Jared, welcome to the show, dude.
What's up, dude? Glad to be
Oh,
back. Oh, it's always good catching up with you.
dude, it is always a great time to catch up. And I actually recorded with Rob the other night, and it was kind of cool because when we were talking, and there was a conversation towards the end, he kind of teed something up for me, and I was talking about how truly this year, I don't know, it's just because of where I'm at in my life as far as mentally and like in a good position, good spot. And I just said how thrilled more so. I've always been happy when my friends have success in the deer woods. I've always have. But this year it just seemed like all my good buddies were just laying the hammer down and nothing fire. And I even said this in that podcast with Rob. I said nothing fired me up more on a day when you would text me just a friggin' awesome stud of a buck, and it seemed like every other day it was happening for you. So I'm excited to go down some hunting rabbit holes with you, man, just because you had a fun year. I can't wait to hear the stories, and two videos are out on at the time of recording this, so who knows how many will be out once this does finally drop. But we got the Maryland part one with Amanda out at this point. Your Maryland buck at this point, it hasn't dropped yet, but your Ohio hunt has dropped, which was kind of cool. It was funny because you texted me and you're like, yeah, look what else, but showed up a couple minutes later. It was just so like knowing what actually happened and seeing it, how it unfolded. It was just like how you texted it. So, which is kind of cool to see. But man, like I said, I'm excited to chat with you. It's always a good time to have good friends on, and I'm pumped, brother.
Yeah, and I'm the same way, man. You were texting me back and forth, whenever you were having some success, and that's my favorite thing too. Like during season, just sharing that with your buddies, just texting back and forth, and kind of, the buddies that aren't having the luck, kind of encourage them a little bit.
Yep.
Give them a little bit of a hard time, but encourage them as well. But yeah, dude, it was a crazy season. I had a lot of success. I killed 5 bucks this year, which is I think the most ever that I've killed in a year. But in the month of November, I think I hunted 8 days and I killed 4 bucks. And I had encounters with, I think, a couple other ones as well that we could talk about, in that frame. So it was just a crazy November. It was wild.
Perfect timing, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, before we do that, Jared, here's what I want to do. I've been trying to switch things up. Obviously, we talk all the time as far as like listening to podcasts where how can we get better and things we learn. And I'm all for that, right? I'm an educator. I love that. But I also like to get a chance for maybe people to, get a chance to know the guests a little bit on a different side of things. So Jared, here, let me ask you this. Let's kick this off with what is Jared listening to in his vehicle?
Metal.
Okay. So listen to metal. All right. So now this is the other one that we're kicking off things with. What is your favorite venison dish?
I actually just had it tonight, and that is a chunk of backstrap in the sous vide for about 2 hours, and then just sear it with salt and pepper. And that's literally what I just had an hour ago. So it's hard to beat.
I tell you what, the salt and pepper thing, I think is extremely underrated. That has been, I would say, the last 2 years, my main. I throw a little bit of different seasoning on sometimes, especially when I cook it for Nora. But there's been times when if I just throw it on the grill or something along those lines, it's just olive oil, salt, and pepper, and like keep it simple. Like I think that is a very underrated situation. All right, I like it, Jared. Now let me ask you this one because I asked Rob this, and it's fresh. It's still new to me. Growing up, who was your favorite WWE or WWF superstar?
Ah, man, I honestly didn't watch a whole lot of that growing up. I'd
Okay.
have to say Hulk Hogan. I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, I never really got into that, surprisingly.
Yeah. Say your prayers and eat your vitamins, all that stuff. I like it. Awesome, Jared. Well, here's a great kickoff to our conversation that we could go with. So you just said 5 bucks awesome encounters throughout things. Looking at your coming into 2023, what kind of expectations did you personally have that you were heading into for this year?
I honestly didn't really have any. I think I'd talked to you about this, but my dad is actually battling cancer right now. We kind of found out back in turkey season. So I didn't plan any big trips. Like I kind of wanted to stay local or within, a few hour drive of the house. So I just wanted to check out some new public, and be kind of available and close to home for him if he needed me. But luckily he's doing pretty good right now. So I was able to get out. But man, I really didn't have much in the way of expectation this year. I didn't really have any goals. I just wanted to go check some new stuff out. Obviously, we talked about, I started in Maryland. I wanted to kind of try that out, just try a bunch of new public and, not really rely on any kind of, beforehand scouting. I just wanted to kind of go in blind this year with no cameras, stuff like that. And it paid off. It just turned out to be one of the best, probably the best year I've ever had in terms of encounters with big bucks.
Yeah, that's really cool because I think the aspect that gets lost in a lot of like obviously social media and what we're all doing and having fun and creating content and just getting out there. Like obviously you work for a hunting company, right? Like so this is your livelihood basically. And it could kind of get lost in that where I love that you just kind of hold it back, like you said, just to get in there and find what's going on like the day of and maybe obviously you're hunting that a couple days and figuring things out. And that's you kind of saw that in that first video of Maryland. And for me, this was my first time hunting Maryland. I'm sure you've been there and had opportunities there in the past, just being right next door for you. How did that kind of go for you? And I know like because earlier on, like I was like, dude, you need to get in those swamps, those little thick areas, and you did. You're like, hey, I was scouting, and I found some good signs, saw some good deer already, and right before the season or right in the beginning of the season. So, how did things kind of work out for you regarding like that time frame?
So Maryland kind of kicked my butt, to be honest with you. And I was just back over there last week to try to, capitalize, but it just didn't work out on a buck. I think I was hunting too deep, to be honest with you. So the area that I was hunting, you could use e-bikes on. So I was e-biking 2 miles back in there, hunting the swamps, hunting the thick stuff, and the deer weren't back there. Like the deer were kind of out on the fringes, closer to roads, which really surprised me. So I did have an encounter with a couple bucks. One in particular was 40 yards from the road. So I come pretty close on that deer, I think. I kind of walked in blind to this spot midday just to check it out. And there was a white oak dropping 40 yards from the road. And I jumped him up. He had made a scrape in there. There was a bunch of does in there. I actually got set up in a tree. I ran back to the truck, grabbed my stuff, came back, and got set up in a tree with him 80 yards away. And he never saw me. And he just never came back to that white oak. So hunted that evening, hunted the next morning, and ended up shooting a gigantic doe in there. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, as far as the bucks, Maryland is the only state that I didn't kill a buck in this year. So
Yeah.
I might try to make it back over for muzzleloader. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I gotta kick my butt.
That's pretty cool. I only went that one weekend, that opening weekend, and kind of regret there was a weekend after I shot, I think my buck, and right before I was going to go to Ohio, I just I don't know, something just came over me. I had a change of heart. Like I was dead set. I had my frame pack all ready to go because I was like, man, if I get into where I'm thinking I need to get to, this might be a pack out if I have success. And I've kind of liked what I was looking at, and I just wanted to just have an adventure. Like whether I saw a deer or not, I just wanted to have some weight on my back and get after it. Something else came up that like the night before, and I remember going into bed that night. I said to my wife, I was like, hey, change of plans. And she's like, really? And obviously when you have your wife telling you like, wait, what? Like, really? And I was like, yeah, I just, hey, I got it done. I've 5 here. I'm getting ready to go to Ohio. It was like kind of that dad husband like guilt thing. Like I'm going to be gone all day, and then Sunday I'll probably be away type of ordeal. But I definitely, I've talked about this before, and Jared, like being the year that you said just a family circumstances, you wanted to be kind of close for your father and all along those lines. I've said it before around our area, because you're just West Virginia. We are so lucky to have, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not the Midwest where it's, monster after monster buck. It seems like these great states, but man, like you killed here a beautiful buck. There's New York, you know what I mean? Like there's so many great adventures. Maryland, man, the buck that I just call him like the 10-finger monster when he came in. Like he wasn't enormous, but like I just remember his rack just almost looked like they were all touching when he came in from underneath that brush and stuff. But we're lucky that we're kind of in that eastern awesome range where we could get to a bunch of places.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about where I live in north central West Virginia is I'm an hour from Maryland, I'm an hour from Pennsylvania, hour and a half from Ohio, 3-4 hours from Kentucky. It's like I can be in so many different states really quick, and that was really nice this year, being able to hit all those different states just kind of close to home, and the tags are cheap too, so that's the nice thing.
Yeah. So to kick off your year though, you were having a lot of success with what Carl always has, what he's packing into to hunt deer with, and that's that trad bows. How did that, what kind of hair got up that butt for you?
Carl, I mean, just seeing his success, and I've always loved shooting a recurve, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna get a longbow this summer, and I'm gonna shoot, and if I'm good enough with it, I'm gonna take it hunting. And I picked up on it pretty quick. I was shooting it really well, and I was like, I'm not gonna completely ditch the compound, but I'm gonna carry it when it makes sense. So I had some bucks here at the house that I was after, and man, I had some good encounters. I had more deer in longbow range this year than ever. And I think I kind of went into the year with that mentality, and it kind of carried through the rest of the year. Even with the compound, all my shots were super close. So it was a different feel for sure with the longbow. And I honestly had more fun in October just hunting like I used to when I was a kid, just going out and like, I'm just trying to get a deer. Like it doesn't matter what it is. And that was so much fun. Like I had an absolute blast and killed 2 does at like 10 yards with it. So that was really, really cool.
Jared, that you hit the nail on the head when you said about like, obviously you had that different piece of equipment, but you were just hunting a deer. And that was, honest to goodness, dude, that was my mentality this year. My buddy Tom was like, dude, just go kill mode. I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's do this. Like, I want to just go have and make experiences. That was my thing. Like, that was when I say goal as far as this year, I had 2. Number 1 was make experiences and to not tag out in PA again this year as far as like a buck goes. So that was, I had 2 main goals, and everything else under that was going to just be, the cherry on top. So that was my thing, was just go get in on deer, have fun. And like you said, if they're close shots, let it rip, make an experience, have fun with it. And this year was so much fun. I mean, the fact that my dad was my brother, he got a bunch of tags. He works for, he's really close friends with the farmer, and man, it just seems like my brother and all these guys, he goes, I swear when we kill all these deer, the next year there's more. He goes, they just don't understand it. They're just, they're like cockroaches basically. Yeah. And my dad starts laughing because my dad missed a decent buck. Well, he hit a really good buck, but never recovered it. And he doesn't really like shooting does until maybe like now type of ordeal. That second season, he might go up or behind the house where he lives. But there was, after one of the last days of rifle season here, when he stopped at the club, another older gentleman was talking to him, and he's like, oh, what kind of year did your boys have? And my dad's like, man, between the 2 of them, they killed like 14 deer. Yeah, he's like, they're killing really well, but he goes, I'm, dad here is struggling on the struggle bus. But yeah, it's, but again, it's about those experiences, and man, I'm excited to hear more about yours. So where after you got those couple doe under your belt, especially using the recurve, and elaborate too maybe a little bit, as you said, getting those close encounters. like being really close for those shot opportunities? Like, where was that first buck for you?
Yeah, so the two does, I really was focusing on white oaks at that point, finding
Mhm.
those hot oaks that were dropping and then setting up just super tight to those. And the night that I shot my first one with the longbow, this was the first one with trad gear, so it was pretty special. I had two spikes come in, and I'm thinking, man, do I really want to shoot a spike for my first one? So I'm sitting there debating. I didn't really have a shot yet. They were kind of in the thick stuff. And right as I'm like, I'm going to shoot whatever gives me a shot. I don't care if it's a spike. This doe comes walking right down the trail, like nice sized doe. I'm like, perfect. This is exactly what I want. And she stepped out, and I made a great shot on her, and she only went 40 yards. So that gave me a little bit of confidence. And then I went back out, I think the next week, and had a just absolute horse of a doe come in. I mean, she was huge. And again, like a 9-yard shot, and smoked her too. So it's like, man, this stuff is fun.
That's
Like,
the one too that was that the one that you were maybe not planning on shooting?
yep.
Yeah. Because I remember
Gonna draw and see how it feels. And I settled in on her, and the bow just went off like, perfect, and just smoked her. I'm like, well, I guess it was just meant to be.
yeah. When you sent me that picture, because I think I killed a deer that night, because I sent that one to you, and you
Yeah.
were like, "Yep," and I shot this horse too tonight. I just remember being like, "Oh my gosh!" Like when you sent that one, I share some photos with our para that does our health and phys ed in our department. She's ex-military. She's a former retired cop, and she just helps out. She does a phenomenal job with us all, and she grew up hunting. She was a sniper in the military. Her husband hunts, so it's cool, like the nailing property. So it's cool to show her things, and she's interested in everything. I always bring in my saddle and show her and all that type of stuff. But I showed her that picture, and I just remember her face. Obviously, those that aren't watching this can't see this, but when I showed it to her, I just remember her being like, "Whoa, like what is that? That's a dinosaur." She said,
It's a big doe.
"Yeah, that's awesome, man." I'll tell you what, the oaks. I almost want to say, and I said this earlier, where the mistakes that I used to make, I tried to limit those this year, and like really scouted hard,
Mm-hmm.
and doing finding those feed trees along those lines. And honestly, Jared, I got to give a lot of that to you guys, like making me go out there and obviously, number one, like help create content for you guys with Tethrd, because it allowed me to, number one, get out there more and do it. You know what I mean? So that I actually owe a lot of that success to that.
That's awesome.
So let's talk about some of those bucks, man, because I'm so intrigued. And like you said, just having that successful year and just that journey that you were on, and like we said, those expectations of kind of just really not having any, right? Like just going out there and having fun, I guess you could probably say, and making those memories, kind of like what we're just kind of really, alluding to. So I
Mhm.
guess going from there, like how did things play out for you then this year?
Yeah, so we had a big hunt planned with the whole Tethrd crew in Indiana for like the first 12 days of November. So I was like, where do I want to go at the end of October? And Ohio is my first choice. I absolutely love hunting Ohio. I've had great success over there. So I was like, but I don't have any access to private or nothing. I was like, I'm just going to go hit a piece of public that I scouted 4 years ago for like a day. Like I didn't even get to scratch the surface on this place. I was like, I'm just going to go back to that place and just figure it out.
Right.
So packed up my truck and trailer, drove over there. Didn't even know where I was going to camp. Like, this is stuff I just figuring out on the fly. So this is kind of the theme of this year, is just kind of just doing it and just seeing what happens. So I roll over there. The first spot that I wanted to camp was closed, so had to kind of resort to plan B. So roll down the road, find a spot to camp. There's some other hunters in the area. It was a Monday, I think, when I got over there. No, it was a Sunday evening. It was a Sunday afternoon when I got there. So there were some hunters in the area. It was funny. I drove up the road looking for a campsite, and there was two dudes hanging from a tree in a saddle, and they had the Skeletor sticks and everything. So I rolled up and I started talking to them and gave them some stickers and stuff. It was cool. But,
Yeah.
they kind of gave me a little bit of intel and they were having a tough time. They were, having a hard time getting on deer. So that first afternoon, by the time I got camp set up, it was about 11:30, and there was an awesome cold front. Like, it was in the 50s. It was going to get down like 28 that night. And then after that, it was going to warm up into like the mid 70s. So my goal was to be in a tree Sunday night in a spot that I felt confident in. So I had marked 4 spots on the map. And when I'm telling you, I was running to check these spots out, like moving through the woods as fast as I could possibly go. The first 3 spots were duds. There was no sign in them. So the last spot, I actually hadn't even picked this spot out on the map, but I pulled up onX, and it was a long ridge that kind of tapers down. Okay. And right where the ridge gets skinny, it's pines, and then it transitions to kind of bigger, more open pines. They're real big, mature pines, so that they're kind of thick underneath. And right at the end of those on onX, you've got the acorn producing layer. And it was showing some oaks right where that transition all happened. And on both sides of that transition was a nice little draw leading down to 2 more ridge points that kind of sat off down toward the bottom. So I'm like, they could be feeding on those oaks. They could be bedded on either one of those ridge points. So I just ran back in there real quick and checked it out. And there was no sign on the ridge top at all. Like, you wouldn't even think a deer lived there.
Yeah.
So I get back to that transition, and there's oaks back there. Well, I see one little rub about the size of a pencil. I mean, tiny. I'm like, all right, there's something in here, but that's pretty small. So there's a little drain back there that drops down off the side of the ridge. I dropped down in there about 25 yards, and it's just like an explosion of buck sign. I mean, scrape, 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 rubs, and it's all like fresh stuff. And I'm like, I need to see this right now. So I ran back to the truck. I mean, I'm hauling it because it's getting late. Grab my stuff, throw my stuff on, hike right back in there. And I kind of figured that the deer would come up the draw from one of those 2 points. And I was just splitting hairs with the wind. It was blowing straight down that draw. So I'm hoping that they come off kind of to the side of me and come up. So I had just gotten the tree, just got my stuff settled in. First sit in Ohio, public land. A doe comes off the ridge top, flies right past me. I'm like, that's weird. What's she running from? And then I hear behind her. I'm like, oh crap, here we go. Pick up my bow, see a tall rack buck, and I'm like, I'm shooting him. I'm like, I don't know how big he is, but I'm shooting him. So come to full draw. I had to wait like a minute and a half or so, but he finally walked right out into my opening. At this point, I'm in kill mode. Like, I didn't look at his rack again. Shot him at 12 yards, smoked him. He runs up the hill 60 yards, tips over pretty much. So I'm like beside myself, right? First afternoon, just come into the spot blind, shoot a buck. So I'm like super pumped. So I'm sitting there, and this year I had a lot of strange things happen. And this was kind of kicked that all off. I'm sitting there, and I hear something walking, and I look up, and I just see a picket fence of tines. I'm like, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. And this buck walks right in, works a scrape, walks right into 12 yards, and is sniffing the arrow that's sticking in the ground. I mean, just an absolutely gorgeous 10-pointer, probably 140-inch buck, something like that. But yeah, I just had to let him walk off.
What's sad, and I've unfortunately have been there. I know exactly how that feels. I killed from my 2019 buck, when I killed that 8-pointer, he ran up the mountain, which was great. And then I remember hearing him crash, calling my dad, and I just said, I just want to check. I could see my lighted knock right there. I said, I just want to check the arrow. You think you hear things, all that type of stuff. And it was only like a 10-yard shot, like close encounter, just like you said. And it was just blood everywhere. When I looked up the mountain, you could see the path that the blood was making. I was like, okay, great. Now, obviously, I was already shaking and had the rushes, but I climbed back up in the tree. And at this point, I got the cold, like I just got super cold and I'm shaking. So I remember reaching in my backpack, grabbing the real big, thick First Light gloves. And I'm putting them on like no care in the world. And I just hear something snap behind me. And I just remember turning back and looking. And Jared, like you said, a big 10-point, super wide. He just looks up at me, no care in the world, just continues to walk, walks right over to that arrow. and sniffs it. He stays there. I could have shot him 50
Oh, yeah.
times, it seemed like, and off he walks away. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, what? And I just remember, and same like you, I got in kill mode. I didn't know how. I saw that he was legal, and that was kind of it. Got in kill mode, put the pin where I wanted it. I remember walking up to my deer and how excited I was, but in the back of my mind, I'm going, my gosh, this one would fit inside the rack of that other one.
Yep, that's exactly what happened. I mean, the buck I killed, he was a nice buck, but he's, one of the smaller ones I've shot in Ohio, but
Yeah.
Still super cool. I laugh at it now because it was the encounter was awesome. And I got a spot for next year. So I'll just have to go back and shoot him next year.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you what. So here's a question for you, because I don't know, maybe someone would be thinking this as well. Obviously you hear about scouting your way in and setting up. And, I know you even did that like in the video of Maryland, like especially in that early season. But here in this story, you talked about like you went in, you scouted, and you ran back out to grab your stuff. What was there a specific reason? Were you just, let me check, and then if not, I was driving to another area type of ordeal? Just because I know maybe someone is thinking the same thing that I was.
Yeah, so it was a pretty good walk back in there, and honestly, I wanted to just move as fast as I possibly can. So if I have all my gear on, it just slows me down a little bit, and I didn't want to be like tempted to set that spot just because I carried my gear. And I kind of figured that's what would happen is I would carry it back there and I wouldn't find anything. And then I would just set up. So I was like, no, I'm just going to go check it out. And if there's sign, I'll go back and get my stuff. So my thought behind sitting it right then, instead of like the next morning or something like that, was I've already laid my ground scent in there. These deer, if they come through and they catch that scent, they may blow out and might not come back for a day or two. So I was like, I'm just going to sit it that way. If something comes in and they happen to smell it, I'm probably going to get a shot before they bust out of there. So that was kind of my thinking there.
Yeah, I like that, because as soon as you said that, you could see I'm pointing at you, because I'm like, yes, that makes sense, because I've fallen victim to that. Like, you bring your thing back here and you're like, I'm already back here. Might as well just throw up a sit and just see what happens, right? And it's that hopeful sit instead of being that confident sit. So
Yep.
All right, so that marks like crazy, situation number one. So you're successful in Ohio. After Ohio, where are you leading to next?
Yeah, so pretty much right out of Ohio. I think I did hunt West Virginia a couple days before I took off for Indiana, and I had an encounter with he would have been a great 4.5-year-old buck, but he didn't even grow one side. It was just gone. Had him at 12 yards, passed him up. So that was a cool encounter. Then the buck that we're after here at the house that we've been after for 2 years now, I had him at 15 yards 2 nights in a row in the daylight, but the hillside he was using to get off out of that bedding is all beech trees, and they all had those leaves on them, and I could not get a shot at him. So he slipped away from me 2 nights in a row. And then, early season like that, those deer are on a pattern for a couple of days and they're gone. And that's exactly what happened here. So, but yeah, after that, we headed to southern Indiana in the national forest there. And I'm not afraid to say that because it's absolutely gigantic. It's so much land, like it's just ridiculous. But I was really excited for this trip. This is a series that's going to come out on the Tethrd YouTube channel next fall that we filmed while we were there. So we had like 16 dudes in camp, just some of the best hunters in the US, honestly. I mean, just some absolute killers. So I was excited because of that, learning from them, just sharing camp with them, and then getting to hunt big hill country, which is what I'm used to. So it's like I'm going to a spot where there's big deer, and I halfway know what I'm doing when it comes to hunting hills. So I was really excited going into this trip.
I like that. So here, let's break this down, because this is where I selfishly have been trying to get better the last couple of years. And I always say, for me, it's one of my good friends, Tim Seesock, where I've already said this recently on a podcast, where he is really good at taking those enormous pieces and breaking them down into little minor chunks and dissecting them, finding things, okay, like how could each piece really play maybe to a certain time of year, and on like what does one favor over the other type of ordeal. So he's extremely good at breaking big pieces down to smaller pieces. And obviously, like you said, hunting the hill country, there's that enormous piece of the land where you're going in Indiana. So how did you break that down and get set up for obviously the end goal of having a successful hunt? And dude, anytime I showed only two good buddies of mine that photo, and they just were like, whoa. And I think at that point in time, for me, selfishly, when knowing what you've sent me, I'm like, my gosh, they get bigger and bigger with her, Jared, at this point.
Yeah. So the Hoosier National Forest is gigantic. And I mean, it's easy to get overwhelmed when you're looking at places like that. But like you said, focus in on a couple spots that you can find. And that's kind of what I hone in on. And that's what I stick with, for the week that I'm there. But when I'm looking at something like that, I'm trying to find as many things coming together in one spot as possible, like 4 or 5 different things in one spot. And in this case, I was trying to find terrain that backed up to standing corn. So hunting with Rendell Eric, I don't know if you've had Rendell on or not.
Yep.
But, he always says corn is king. He's in Iowa. When I hunted out there with him, I learned very quickly that if you can find standing corn that backs up the public, it's generally going to be good. So I really only picked 2 spots to start, and both of them backed up to standing corn, and they were both really good terrain features in steep hill country. So the first one, I actually had a buck encounter. I think the first morning I hunted it, I was 30 yards out of the game. He chased a doe right past me, and I was just out of the game. Pretty good buck. And so a guy on my team that morning had shot a buck, and I went to help him recover it, pack it out, film the recovery, all that. So I had this other spot marked where it's 2 big ridge systems that kind of join with one little saddle. And then there's a standing cornfield on private that comes down to an inside corner right at the saddle. And then adjacent, kind of off the back side of that saddle, you've got a real thick drain back there on the side of that hill. So it looked absolutely killer. So after I helped him get his buck out, I kind of wanted to scout my way into that area. Never been in there before. Like, I literally drove down the road, and in the bottom by the road was all standing corn as well, backed up to the public. And you got all these ridge points dumping down. I'm like, man, this looks really good too. And looking at OnX on the top of the ridge, it's all like CRP. So I'm like, man, this looks just absolutely killer. So I started scouting my way into this spot, and it's late in the afternoon, so I didn't really have a whole lot of time. And I get back to this drainage, and it's just destroyed with scrapes. I'm like, oh man, this looks awesome. So it's CRP drainage that leads to standing corn. So it's kind of a no-brainer, really.
Yeah.
So I start climbing a tree, and I'm like 2 sticks high, and I look up, and there's a dude in a tree stand like 60 yards away, or he's strapping the tree stand onto the tree. I'm like, daggone it. He beat me into this spot. So I climbed down real quiet, and I kind of pushed back in a little bit farther and set up. And I really wasn't super happy with my setup that evening. It was really hot. It was like 75 degrees. So
wow.
Ended up seeing like 2 does, just a really slow evening. So that evening back at camp, I started looking at that spot a little bit more. And if you push back on that ridge past all that CRP that looks amazing, that's where that saddle is at. That's where that other field is that I assumed could be standing corn, but I wasn't sure. It just looked like it on the map. So I figured the next morning, I was like, I'm going to push back into that spot. I've never been in there. It's a 1.25 mile walk. I'm just going to go for it and see how it pans out. So I make the hike back in there the next morning. It went smoother than I thought it would, honestly. It went too smooth. It's like one of those hunts where everything just goes, it's too perfect. So I get set up in the tree, and it's still dark. I have a buck chase a doe past me. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the morning. So gets daylight, buck, 4 different bucks, but they crossed the ridge 40 yards higher than I anticipated. So I was just out of the game again. So I look at OnX, and I'm like, why are they crossing the ridge right there? And it's just a real subtle little secondary point that comes up from the bottom on the other side. and then they cross the top and they drop right into this real thick drainage that borders that standing corn. So I looked at that, and this was like 7:30 in the morning. It's early, like right after daylight. And I'm like, I need to move. I have to pack my stuff and move before a bigger buck does what those deer did. So I literally packed up all my stuff as quick as I can, walked up 50 yards, I found a little scrape up there, and I was like, all right, this is where those bucks cross. You know, the sign tells me that they crossed right here. So I found the first tree and climbed up, and I was relocated within 10 minutes. I mean, it didn't take me any.
Huge.
Yep. So I'm in the new tree. I'm confident. I'm like, man, if a bigger buck comes through here, I'm golden. I look down on the edge of the standing corn where I just came from. Nice 8-pointer walks out right past the tree that I was just in. I was like, yep, that's how this is going to go. There's probably going to be a giant do the same thing. But it was a half hour exactly after I moved. I hear something coming behind me, pull up my binos, shooter, like big buck. So grab my bow. It's one of those situations where he's coming in straight behind me and he's walking right at the tree. And I don't know which way he's going to go. I don't know if he's going to go to my strong side or my weak side. Well, he kind of acted like he was going to go off to the weak side. So I go over my bridge, turn around on the platform. At the last second, he decides he's going to come the other way. So I'm all twisted up with the camera arm and my bow and all this stuff. So this deer is walking. He's 10 yards from me, and he has no clue I'm in the world. And I just see a picket fence of tines. I'm like, this deer's a freaking giant. So I literally come over the bridge, draw, and pivot behind me in one motion, and he stops at 10 yards, has no idea that I'm there. He didn't see any of this movement somehow. I settle the pin. I remember taking my time, breathe, settle, squeeze the shot off, and it went way to the right of where I was aiming, like a foot. But It still, it looked like it went right through his shoulder. Like it just made the nice pop sound. And when it hit him, he let out a real deep grunt, like, and then he kind of, I hit him. He kind of trotted off about 60 yards and he stopped. I'm like, he's dead. He's going to fall over right there. He flipped his tail and he just walked off. I'm like, what in the world? So now I'm starting to second guess everything, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't get the shot on my main camera, but I got it on the 360 camera, and he's 10 yards. So you could kind of see what happened.
Yep.
Pull up the footage. I'm looking at it frame by frame. Shot does not look good. Way high and forward in front of his shoulder. And I'm like, man, I don't think I killed that deer based on his reaction. And, it looked like it hit top of the shoulder up in his neck. I'm like, that's just like it's a muscle wound. Like that deer's probably not dead. So I get down, can't find my arrow. I'm like, well, crap, this isn't good. So I walk down to where he stopped, and there's blood everywhere, like foamy blood, like bright pink. I'm like, maybe the shot was a little better than I thought. Maybe I got lower and took out the windpipe, that jugular, whatever. So I called Carl and Rendell, and they come up, they hiked all the way in there to help me out, which, I'm super thankful for. But they get in there and we're all excited. Like, we think this is a dead deer within 100 yards. We start tracking. We make it about 80 yards and the blood just stops.
Oh,
like, what the heck? So we grid searched, tried to find blood, kind of walked where he was going. And he ended up down on this little ridge point, and it looked like he had worked a scrape. There was a scrape there that was just all worked out, and there was blood in it. Like, this deer worked a scrape. Like, I don't think it's a fatal hit. So we got to looked at the footage and looked at my arrow, and my lighted nock had exploded on release and sheared off right where it joins the collar.
Okay.
That is why my arrow went a foot high and right of where I was aiming. So that's, another weird circumstance. Like, I've shot that arrow 1,000 times this year, and it blows up on a big buck.
Right.
So we go back to camp. I show everybody the footage. I actually called a few different people. I talked to Andy May. I talked to Greg Clements from THP. He's really good with hits and stuff like that. And everybody said the same thing. It's non-fatal. That deer's going to be fine. So I'd kind of chalked it up as, I didn't get this one, but I'm going to go back in there and and maybe get another shot at a different one or him or whatever. But there was one guy in camp, Dustin Mole. I don't know if you know him or not.
No, I don't.
But he's an absolute killer. He's the one guy that said, I think that deer's dead, dude. And the next morning I went back into that spot, and I'm sitting there, and I just kept thinking of what he was talking about. And something just kept telling me to get down and go push back farther onto this ridge and look at this spot. Like something kept telling me to go over there. So I packed up my stuff, climbed down, and I walked right to that deer. He was deader than the doornail, 300 yards away.
Dude, that is insane.
Yeah.
What was he telling you that kind of got the gears going for you?
I don't know. Like the hit, if you see it on video, and you'll see it, when the video comes out, it's one of those hits where it's like, it could be fatal. It might not be. It just looked like it was too high up in his neck, but it ended up being a little bit lower, and he was quartered to me just a hair. And I think that's what saved me, is that quartered angle. It ended up being a perfect shot. Like it went through right at the top of the scapula, came out armpit on the other side.
Wow.
There was no blood. So I'm shooting a small fixed blade, cut on contact. In that situation, the penetration was great, but there just wasn't any blood making it to the ground. So that's kind of what fooled us. And as well as after we found the arrow that had passed through, there was no blood on it. It was like fat, kind of greasy type stuff. Like just everything added up to a non-fatal hit. And it just kind of fooled all of us. And but Dustin was the one guy. He's like, man, I think at that angle and everything, I think he's dead. And he was 100% right.
Wow, that's awesome. And I'll tell you what, and again, not to sound like a homer or whatever like that, but man, like that shot and that shot opportunity, and in that hunting situation of being a little bit 50 yards down lower and being able to get down quickly, efficiently, and confident in your setup. And again, I don't care what setup you're doing. Obviously, I'll sit there and I'll tell you till I'm blue in the face why you should maybe try saddle hunting. But at the same time, that just shows you the confidence that if you are confident in your equipment that you use, there is no doubt about it. You can get down, go where you need to go, right? And yeah, you get up, you see another buck only where you just were. That's just how it goes, right? But at the same time, that number one. Number two, then that deer coming into where he's coming from. Again, I don't care what anybody says. You have a shot if that deer is within your radius, and as long as there's no tree limbs, no nothing, you have a shot opportunity, right? So being able to swing around and that is the one aspect that I can't stress about enough. And that's why hopefully when people watch those clips that I make for you guys, when I say practice those fluid motions, like you said, when you're in your strong side, but you're drawn back, and as you're going, you're turning to be in that shot opportunity. That is key. You need to practice that. Yes, you could probably do it. Are you going to be comfortable doing it? Maybe, probably not. But the more you do it, you will be comfortable. And it's just second nature. And then for you, it absolutely is.
Yeah, especially a situation like that where you've got a big buck coming on a string right to your tree, and you don't know which way he's going to go. Like you would be messed up at a tree stand in that situation. I don't care what you're sitting in. But luckily for me, he had his mind on other things, and he wasn't looking up. So
yeah, because that was my next question for you, Jared, was going to be like what went wrong where this year? Because obviously, we always hear the good and we see the good. Maybe what were some challenges that kind of came about? If was there anything else other than that situation?
Oh yeah. So so we'll get into the very next buck, like right after this hunt.
Yeah.
Killed the buck in Indiana. That was awesome. Great buck. Come straight home, and it's the rut. Like I'm fired on all cylinders now. It's go time. So I get home, I go right to a spot that I've had luck in before. It's a doe bedding area, and these deer filter back in from acorns in the morning. I'm like, that's exactly where I'm going to go. I went in there. It was super cold that morning, like 24 degrees, something like that. It's cold for me, but Get set up, had does working their way down into the bedding just like I planned. And I look up there, stud 10-pointer. Beautiful buck, like pushing 140, probably mid 130s, 140, which that's a big deer for around here. Yep. I had a half-hour standoff with this buck. He was kind of eye level with me up on this ridge, and I'm kind of down over in this laurel. And he's up on this bank, and he's got the high ground on me, which didn't help. But he was with a group of does, and when he kind of turned, I snort wheezed at him. And I think we talked about it last year when I shot my Iowa buck. Like I rely on a snort wheeze a lot, and it's killed me quite a few deer. So I snort wheezed at this buck and definitely got his attention, but it's all open hardwoods, and he's looking down there and he can't see another deer. So he's curious, but he's really cautious. So I snort wheezed at him once. He turned and he started to leave. And right as he kind of got out of sight where he couldn't really see where I was at, I snort wheezed at him again. And man, he turned and he started coming, but slowly but surely, like just being very cautious. So when he got kind of down in the laurel about 40 yards from me, and I turned my head and I grunted because there's kind of a roll in the hill down below me, and I grunted, and that sealed the deal. Like he was convinced that there was another buck down there. So he comes walking in. I come to full draw. I've got my Sitka neck gaiter on, the big thick one, right? Yep. It tends to kind of get in your way a little bit whenever you've got a thumb release like I shoot. So he's coming in. He's walking kind of at an angle right at me. I'm like, I'm already at full draw. I'm like, I'm just going to let him keep coming, make it easier on myself. He gets to 22 yards. He's just quartered to me just a little bit, and he's wide open. So I stop him, and I had already kind of settled into my anchor, but that neck gaiter was still up a little bit too high. So I guess my fingers must have been frozen from holding the release for a half hour because it was, 24 degrees. Yep. I must have been putting a little bit more pressure on it than I thought. When I pushed that neck gaiter down, my bow went off, and I was not ready, like at all. The pin wasn't even on him. The bow goes off, arrow sounds like it smokes a rock, and the buck just takes off. I'm like, I'm so pissed. Yep. I'm so mad. This is like the biggest West Virginia buck I've had a chance at with a bow, and I just completely blew it. So I think that I'm missing, but I'm looking at my arrow sticking in the ground, and it looks like there's blood on it. I'm like, man, this probably isn't good because it was really low. So I look at the 360 footage again, and I definitely hit him. Like he ducked so far that when he ducked and he was quartered to me a little bit, he had his legs spread apart, and it looked like it went in like the front of his brisket. And at this point, I'd switched broadheads, and I had a big cut on contact, like big sucker on there.
Yeah.
Maybe I got that jugular or something, and maybe I got him. So I got down, and dude, the blood trail was crazy, like tons of blood. I'm like, I think I killed this deer. I ended up tracking this deer. I think I shot him at 8:30. I tracked him for over 2 miles, just dumping blood. I got into a bedding area with him and jumped him up, and he started bleeding again, like spraying blood, like not just drops blood, like arterial, like spray. And I'm like, I hit something major in this deer. So I tried to push him. I chased this freaking deer, I don't know how far, a long ways. And then the blood just kind of started tapering off. So I called the track right at dark, tracked him all day, went back the next morning, tracked him another mile. And the blood finally he never bedded again. Blood dried up. So I think probably caught the back of that leg right at the brisket, caught that artery or that vein in there or whatever. But that one got away from me because I shot too early because of my freaking neck gaiter.
Wow, though. Man, they are so friggin' tough.
This year really, we ain't even got to the rest of the deer yet where, that is very apparent. But to keep going on that story. So I tracked that deer for 2 days, didn't get him, assumed that he, probably lived through that. So I have a rut funnel that I only sit at like one time a year, like that third week of November, like that, the week before rifle season here in West Virginia is like the best time to be in the woods. So I Actually, I sat that spot in the evening and passed up 115-inch 10-pointer that he's a 3-year-old. I've got a lot of pictures of him. I decided I wasn't going to shoot that deer beginning of the year. And that's a hard deer for me to pass.
Yeah.
I'll just be honest with you. He came right through that funnel, right past me. Could have shot him super easy. So I was like, well, I'm going to try this spot the next morning. I've never hunted it in the morning. So it's basically 2 ridge points that, tip
Yep.
the end of the points are my fingers. And there's a kind of a high wall in this drainage that they have to go around. It's like straight up and down sheer drop off. So you got bedding on those 2 points, and it's just a perfect travel corridor. And the wind works perfect in this spot. Like, it's just a killer setup. So I go back in there the next morning, and immediately deer up underneath me. I had a button buck underneath me, 2 button bucks. And a doe comes flying out of the bedding off that point, runs right past me. I look behind her, dandy 8-pointer, definite shooter. Like, all right, here we go. He's going to follow her. I'm going to smoke him at 20 yards. Well, he's down in the bottom and he's chasing another doe around. So I snort wheeze at him and he stops, and man, he's looking, and I've got this button buck right underneath me. I'm like, this is perfect. Like, I've got a decoy. So he chases that doe around a little bit. I snort wheeze at him again. And man, he's getting pissed. Like, he lays his ears back and he's just standing there. So I'm like, if I can get this button buck to run up the hill, I think that this buck will come up here. So I swung around the tree on purpose so this button buck would see me. He's right underneath me. It worked perfect. The button buck saw me, runs up the hill, and as he's running, I grabbed the grunt call, bah, 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 like a buck chasing a doe. That was all it took. That sucker laid his ears back. He come marching right up there, and he's 14 yards. I'm already at full draw. Like, either way he goes, I got a shot. And he starts to get nervous. Like, my thermals were kind of dropping down to where he was at. And he took a step backwards like a buck does when they're getting ready to leave. And he turned, quartered to me. And I mean, at 14 yards, fixed blade, I'm not afraid of that shot one bit. I tucked it in right in front of his shoulder. I mean, just absolutely smashed him. And he ran 38 yards and was dead in like 8 seconds.
Dude, that is awesome. The fact that, like, on the fly, Jared, that you could come up with that. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm sure there's amazing hunters that could also do that, but to have that going on in your mind to do that, dude, that is freaking impressive. That is awesome. Because I mean, we're sitting there, we're trying to mimic a deer, like you said, like that, and you actually have it. And then, hey, I'm going to spook this deer to run up there while he's running, and then swing around and be ready to kill this deer. That is freaking awesome.
Yeah, and I got all this on video, and it's probably the best video I got all year. I mean, I got the kill shot perfect and everything. So, but the cool thing about this buck, I knew he was a good buck when I shot him, heavy chocolate racked 8-pointer. And when I walked up to him, I immediately knew which deer he was. I've had him on camera the last 3 years, and I have a matched set of sheds off of him. And this was the oldest buck that I killed this year. Like, he could be 6.5. His teeth are worn flat, and he's 112-inch 8-point, just a beautiful mountain buck, like just an awesome buck. But I hadn't been running cameras or nothing in there. I had no idea he was around. Like, he just showed up, and I pissed him off, and man, he come strolling right up there.
That's awesome. So 2 things about that hunt, right? Obviously, it's West Virginia. It's your home state. It's in your backyard, if you're familiar with. Yep. You weren't running cameras, like you said. You're just kind of you're going with what you know and having fun with that. But the importance of knowing where the doe groups are, the importance of, like you said, that rut funnel, and like you said, you mentioned earlier how you use snort wheezing as one of your main calling tactics. That is something over the last couple of years that I've grown to use, and I think it's really important that. And you killed. I could be wrong. You killed a couple of years ago that really nice Ohio buck by doing that. Like, I know you like with that snort wheeze, where I've had either a blown opportunity or whatever it be, but or just another almost opportunity when a deer starts walking away like that after snort wheezing, and you think it's not interested. man, when you give him that one more where you make him second guess and piss him off, and then man, like I've seen that work more times than anything else.
100%. Like it's crazy how effective it is in the right situation. Like it's not going to work on a younger deer, I don't
Right.
think, because a less dominant deer, it's not going to work.
Right.
But a bigger, more mature buck, and you're challenging him in his territory. And then the key is they can't see what's around you. They have to come check it out. Like, that's the key to everything. If it's big open hardwoods and they can see everything,
Right.
the chance of them coming down there is pretty much none. But if they've got some kind of terrain in between, where they're hearing that, they're generally going to come check it out. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, I've seen like with my own eyes, and like whether I'm farther away and they might come in a little bit, they get interested, and then for whatever reason they're not interested. They're like, oh wait, that doe was where, and picking up that scent. And as soon as they take a couple more steps and I hit that next snort wheeze, then they're like, who is it's just like it like refreshes them again of like, okay, and I was going over there for a particular reason, and you're like I said, like you're one of the main individuals that I've known that has had a lot of success doing that. But the more time like I've tried it, I have success. Even like you said, like even those younger deer, not so much, because they're like, I'm gonna get my tail kicked here. Like, why? You know what I mean? And the importance of, like you said, not it being in the wide open. But man, that's my kind of go-to call as well.
Yeah, and it's just you have to read the situation, right? Kind of have to read that deer's body language and how he's acting. And all these deer are different; they all act different. So you kind of have to, just see what happens sometimes with them. But man, I'd have to add up how many like big mature bucks I've shot by doing that. But those two in particular, the 10 and the 8 that I shot, I think I snort wheezed at those bucks 3 times a piece. Like just super aggressive, as loud as I could do it. I do it with my mouth.
Yep.
But I mean, it didn't work the first time, but the third time was the kind of the clincher.
So here's the one aspect that I want you to think about too, and why I am extremely thankful, one, for our friendship, and also being able for you to be detached from specific hunts. That night that I had that encounter with the Maryland buck, it was raining, and when it was starting to slow down, I gave out like a little calling sequence, and this is in September, dude. Like this isn't, you know what I mean? Like I just wanted another buck to know, like if the scrape that I found was the size of my little desk that I'm on right now, which is the size of a car hood. And I just remember walking by and I saw that. And again, I saw this little trail coming out of this thick patch, and it was coming up over this ridge. The way the wind was blowing, I was like, I'm setting up facing that because I'm going to kill a deer before it gets there. And that deer came from my weak side, like just total opposite direction where I was anticipating. But as that rain was lightening up, I gave a little couple grunt calls, and I did do a snort wheeze. And then like that's why I was so fixated on that spot. Like I was looking through and trying to find the legs through that movement, and then that's when something told me to look right, and he was already right there. And it's like, it is September. Like, what was that? September?
Yeah, it was
early, right? Do you know what I mean? Like,
so 2 weeks of September.
Yeah. So I mean, at that point in time, I'm not saying that's what brought him in. I don't know. Like there was other features to that, but that it wasn't. I'm telling you, Jared, it wasn't that much longer after I did that little calling sequence.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a situation like that, especially early season when it's thick and these deer can't see very far. You can't see very far; they can't either. Especially if you're set up in an area like that where there's a big scrape like that. I'll do the same thing. I'll let out a couple grunts. I'll thrash a tree. Try to get. If that buck's within hearing distance and that he's already wanting to be at that scrape, I mean, there's a good chance he's going to come over there and check you out.
Yeah. All right. So we had Maryland hunts. We've had Ohio success. We've had Indiana success. We've had West Virginia success. So there's 3 of the 5 deer so far. Where to next, dude?
All right. So the next one was opening day of rifle here in West Virginia. And that morning we had a weird northeast wind, which we don't typically get this time of year. And I think I might have texted you this. I don't remember or not, but I remember you saying Northeast is the best or something along those lines. But I'm looking at all of my spots and I'm like, where the heck can I go on a northeast wind? And I've got access to a property a county over where I killed a really big 10-pointer 2 years ago. And there's a spot back there. I actually hunted it the first day last year and had a buck encounter. And I pulled up onX and I'm looking at it. I'm like, man, that spot sets up perfect for a northeast wind. You've got a pasture field to the west. You've got kind of thick, like CRP, brushy grass stuff to the east. And then you've got these 2 ridge points that come out of the northeast, perfectly in line with the wind. And then in between those is a bunch of buck bedding that I'd found like last year. So I was like, man, this spot sets up perfect for the wind, for the bedding, for everything. I was like, I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to throw a spot at this, or throw a set at this spot. And again, I hadn't run any cameras in there, so I had no idea what was around. But the one day I was in there, I think I went in there in like mid-October and looked around, but never hunted it. But I found some rubs in there that were, this big, with big brow tine gouge marks in them. I'm like, there's a good buck in here for sure. But, again, no cameras, so didn't have any photos. So I was like, I'm just going to go throw a sit at that spot and maybe he'll come through. So I hike in there, get set up. It's super cold that morning. The wind is perfect, coming right down the ridge like I planned. And I could hear something walking down in that draw, but it was just a little too dark. I couldn't see. So I'm looking down there and I'm looking, and I finally catch movement and I see just big, tall rack, like immediate shooter. So I pull up my gun. He's standing there and he's kind of quartered to me, but I could see his whole neck. I could see his shoulder, like wide open shot at 65 yards.
Wow.
Pull up the gun, put it on him, pull the trigger, and the trigger was just like spongy, like nothing happened. I'm like, what the heck? So my bolt wasn't closed all the way is what had happened. So the bolt was halfway open. And when I pulled the trigger, the bolt just closed. And released the firing pin, but the gun didn't go off. So when I went to jack the shell out of the gun, it didn't pull the round out of the chamber, like it was stuck in there. So I'm trying to force another round in and it won't go. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I'm freaking out. And this deer's just standing there looking at me 65 yards. So I got the gun upside down, shaking it, trying to get, and it's rattling, like all the shells are rattling like crazy in this thing. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. So I finally figured out that the round was still in the chamber. So I pushed, this gun doesn't have a mag. It's just, you just feed them in from the top. So I pushed the other rounds down with my finger and I shoved the bolt forward. And when I pulled it out, it flipped that round out of there. And I jacked the other one in and he was still just standing there looking at me. It probably sounded like rattling antlers or something, me janking all these shells in the gun. But he was standing there looking at me. I could see the one side sticking out from behind the tree, and it's just big, tall, and I could see big, long brow. And I put it on his shoulder and just hammered him, just dropped him right there. I'm like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. Like, seriously? I didn't know how big he was. I was like, this deer might be 150. I don't know. Like, he's big and tall. So I'm like, I send a video to my buddies and they're like, F you, you son of a, it's like, I just shot all these other bucks. I get down to him and man, he's just a stud of an 8-pointer, like beautiful 8-pointer, nice tall brows, tall tines, just an awesome buck. And turns out, which I didn't realize this until like 2 days ago, I passed that buck up last year, like toward the end of the first week of rifle season, up on top of that ridge. I'd sat up there one evening and he came out and super nice 8-pointer. And I was like, man, not quite what I want to shoot. I've already killed a couple other good bucks. So I'll let him go. And my buddies kind of gave me hell for passing that buck up. And turns out I ended up killing him anyway. And he was a lot bigger. So
that's awesome, dude. It's amazing how, I'm pretty sure when you and I were talking, I was like, man, that northeast wind, this year it's been working. And in years past, like I said, I know Jake Hofer was one individual that really put that on the map as far as like saying, man, when I have an east wind, I'm killing. And it's just like year after year, it happens. And, talked to someone else too recently where they're like, if you have a predominant west wind for 4 days and then all of a sudden it just switches, they don't care what direction it is. Deer are moving because deer got to move to change now either bedding locations and the way they're going to access their food, whatever it be. So deer are moving, right? So oh man, that's awesome. And it's just amazing again for how perfect on the outside your season has looked. It's far
I've had
from it.
more equipment failures. And dude, another thing that happened that I don't even know if I've told anybody about, my sight on my bow. I come back from a hunt. It was actually after I missed that 10, or I hit that 10. I came back and I'm like, all right, I want to shoot my bow and make sure I'm good. I shot. It was like 1.5 feet high at 20. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I've never had stuff like this happen to me.
Right.
And here, where the bracket mounts to the carbon bar, that mounts to the riser, I don't know if it's got one bolt in it, but I think it's like epoxied on there. It's a red line RL2, I think. But that epoxy bond had broken and my whole scope housing would do this, but it was kind of tight. Like it took some force to move it, but it was pushed down. And that's why I was shooting 1.5 feet high. So once I pushed it back up, it was dead on. So I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. It's like, I mean, I use my equipment, but I'm not like hard on it. I take care of my stuff, but it's like this crazy stuff just keeps happening to me.
Like you said, man, it's just, hey, but you stay calm. You've done it before. I honestly, I know you've told it, and we already told another story, but I still can't get over the bow buck from West Virginia by you using that young one as a decoy and just going through that. And like, to me, dude, that just shows me like I put you already up on the pedestal. I mean, I'll off air. I don't want to make it so people think that I'm just brown nosing, because I'll have to send you some funny things. So I could go out on a limb, Jared, and I have it here with my buddy Tom. I was like, dare I say it? I said Jared Shaffer just surpassed Andy May in my book.
I don't think so. I want to be like Andy when I grow up. Maybe that's trying so hard, but I'm just stubborn and I don't give up.
It's persistent, man. I know.
It's key, but
dude, and then you came to PA and you smacked a good one.
And this is the one I'm proud of. Like,
yeah,
I'm really proud of this one because and this one didn't go perfect either. Like, we'll get into it in this story, like just another crazy circumstance. But I based this whole hunt on the wind. I picked this spot based on what the wind was going to do for that week. It was going to be super cold, like in the teens, snow, and 20-mile-an-hour west wind. I'm like, man, this is going to suck. But I found this north-south running ridge, and it's a big ridge, big, steep, long ridge. Like, it runs for probably a couple miles. And that's a lot of, same type of stuff we run into here in West Virginia, in Pennsylvania. Right. You get these big, long ridges. And in that situation, I'm looking for like the biggest, nastiest, steepest drainage I could find on the side of that mountain. And this ridge had it. Like, it had a real steep. There was 2 drains that come off the side of the mountain, and it meets into this big drain. And the drain kind of turns into like rhododendron laurel. And then at the bottom, it's all laurel and pines. And then up the other ridge is all clear cut.
Yep.
So I'm like, this spot has got to be good. And it's a hike to get in there. I mean, so I actually ended up finding a spot to camp on top of the east ridge, the ridge that runs parallel to the one I wanted to hunt. So I was like, man, I can camp right there and just walk from my truck and not have to drive anywhere. Like, this is going to work perfect. So the first evening, I got there on Monday evening. This is the second week of Pennsylvania rifle season. Get there Monday evening. My goal was to just get to that creek bottom so I could see what that hillside looked like. So you have to go through a clear cut to get to it. So I go through this clear cut, find my way down through there. It's pretty thick, but not too bad. And dude, there's freaking giant rubs in there. I'm like, all right, I think we're going to be in business. There's some good deer in here. So I get to the bottom and there's a climbing stand right on the edge of the clear cut. I'm like, it kind of makes sense. I'm a half mile from the road. It's fairly easy to get to. So that just tells me right there, there's probably been somebody in here this past week, and these deer are going to be pushed up onto this next ridge. You got to cross a creek, which is not hard, but I mean, you still got to be careful getting across it. You got to cross a creek and then up a super steep hillside, to get to the elevation where these deer are at. So I'm like, I kind of figure they're pushed back. I don't think they're going to be at the top of the ridge because it's super windy and cold. They're going to be at that lower elevation where they've got some thermal cover out of the wind. Like, this was my whole game plan.
Yep.
So that evening, I didn't go across the creek. I just wanted to see what it looked like. So hiked out of there, didn't find a better way to get in and out. Like, it's just sucks. It's straight up and it's right through that clear cut. So it wasn't a whole lot of fun. So it's freaking freezing cold and I'm camping at the top of the ridge. And I mean, it's blowing snow and I've got my little cargo trailer camper. It doesn't have any heat in it. So my door is like frozen shut. All my water's frozen. Like, it's freaking freezing cold. I'm like, what am I doing, man? This is so dumb. But I'm like, I want to have a good adventure in Pennsylvania. And I'm freaking going to do it. I'm going to freeze to death, but I'm going to do it. So the next morning, my plan was to get to the creek bottom at daylight and watch that hillside. So I get down there, I'm watching the hillside and saw several deer and a couple bucks, small bucks. They weren't legal, but I was like, all right, there's some deer in here. So that evening, there was kind of a ridge point that comes off that main ridge, and there's a drainage to the south and a drainage to the north.
Okay.
And half the deer I saw went one way, half went the other way. And I was like, well, I'm gonna hunt this southern drainage just to see what I see. And it was absolutely brutal. I mean, it had to have been wind chill close to zero. I mean, it was freezing cold. Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting in a tree that morning at about 10:30, and I sat till dark. And that wind was hitting me in the face all day long. I mean, it was just brutal. I ended up seeing 6 does and a spike, I think. Like, all right, so saw some deer, just didn't see a buck. So my plan for the next morning was to do the same thing, start in the creek bottom, and then after sitting for a couple hours, work my way to the north drainage. That was like the main spot I wanted to check out, but I wanted to have like a whole day to get back in there. So set up in the creek bottom, saw a couple does. Again, I think it was the same doe group that I saw the night before. There were 6 of them. So let them feed off. I got down at about 9 o'clock and started scouting my way back into this spot. And it's about 1.25 miles back there. It's a pretty good little hike. So I start getting back in there and not really much sign, not seeing much. And then I get to there's a little knob that was all red oaks that dumped off into this drainage that I wanted to hunt. I got up on that knob and there was a big fresh scrape in the snow that one had just made that morning. I'm like, all right, here we go. We're in the game now. Because anytime I've found scrapes like that in late November that are fresh, it's generally a good sized buck in experience anyway. So before I even got in the tree, there was a doe feeding on the side of the drainage, spotted her. She had no idea I was there. I'm standing there like in the wide open timber, and a little fork horn comes walking right past me, like 10 yards. He never saw me, just walked right past me. I'm like, all right, it's good spot, So I pick a tree, get set up. Had a couple does come up out of the drainage, kind of right where I planned on. I'm like, man, this is going pretty good. And it was like 5 o'clock. It was getting, last light, and a doe comes flying up out of the drainage behind me. There's a little secondary drainage behind me. She comes flying up out of there, and behind her, I see another deer. I'm like, it's got to be a buck. I pull the gun up. I didn't even pull the binos up because he was running, and I just see wide, heavy rack. I'm like, freaking shooter, like for sure. So the doe kind of comes up the hill, and she turns and goes back down, and he turns like he's going to follow her. And I'm like, I've got like seconds to shoot to get a shot off. So he's like hard quartered away from me at 60 yards, almost facing away from me, shooting a rifle, I'll take that shot.
All
So
day.
I put it on him and I shot, and I could tell that I hit him, but it didn't knock him down. So I jack another round in and he's running, and I shoot again. And like a second after I shot, he went down. He was on the ground. And I'm like, yes, freaking did it. Got him. And he's laying there and I could see him, I can see his back end, and I'm holding the gun on him for a couple minutes, making sure he's not getting up. So I pulled the gun down and I turned around to look at the camera or something, and I hear a deer running, and I turn around and he's running off of the ridge. I'm like, you got to be freaking kidding me.
Oh my God.
I'm only like 2 sticks high. So I literally jump out of the freaking tree. I'm like, I'm going to get a second shot on him. I get over to where he was at. There's blood all over the ground. I get in this little drainage, and he had been on the ground sliding down the hill. I'm like, this deer's dead. Like, he's hurting bad. I get to the bottom of that drainage, and then he's on his feet, and it's just running tracks. I'm like, what the heck? And at this point, like, I've got my headlamp. It's getting dark. I've never been in this spot before. Like, I don't know where I'm, I know where I'm at, but it's like in the dark, everything just starts to look different.
Yeah, everything looks the same.
Yeah. So I'm following blood, and I get to the edge of the ridge where it just drops straight off. And it didn't look like he went over it, but there's a deer trail that kind of parallels the side of the ridge. So I'm like, well, he either went one way or the other. So I go one way, no blood. Go the other way, no blood. I'm like, what the heck? Like, this deer, like, he was on the ground sliding, like he's hurt bad.
Right.
So I was like, you know what? Like, instead of risking it and getting back in here and getting turned around and my headlamp dies and all this stuff, it's like, I'm just going to back out and play it safe. So I go back to camp, and I'm talking to all my buddies and everything. And they're like, dude, that deer's dead. There's no way. And I'm thinking the same thing. I'm like, he's got to be dead. There's just no freaking way that he survived that shot. So, I was comforted a little bit, was fairly confident that he was dead, but there's still that thought in the back of your mind, So next morning, get up super early, hike back in there, and, I'd marked the blood. I left my hat there so I could find it. But what he had done is he had started down that deer trail, and then he just dumped off the side of the ridge, like straight down. And once I found that, like, I just missed it in the dark because, it's hard to see, but his running tracks, and then I'm going toward the creek, and I'm like, this is a good sign. He's going downhill, like straight downhill toward the creek. So I get down to the creek, and I'm looking, and there's blood all over the ground where he had laid down right there. And I see something laying in the creek, and I pull up my binos. I'm like, man, that looks like a deer, but I don't see its head. And then I looked over to the left, and I see the big side, 5-point side sticking out of the water. Like, he was submerged in the freezing cold creek, like just completely submerged. But I freaking got him.
You got him, dude. Oh, that one out of all your deer. I mean, obviously from Pennsylvania, it hits home obviously for me, but that deer was just beautiful. I just like everything about him was just picture perfect. Like, they're the ones that get the drawings and the paintings of. That's him.
Perfect, symmetrical mass, super dark. He probably living in that laurel, so it's just super dark rack. But man, just a beautiful buck. I mean, and I didn't know how big he was when I shot him. Like, I just saw, definite shooter. But I was pleasantly surprised whenever I walked up on him. He was a freaking dandy.
That's awesome. What an experience that one, like you said, just freezing 20 miles an hour. And here's the one aspect that I love too, going back to what we were saying earlier about practicing and maneuvering and being confident in your equipment. I find gun hunting super simple and easy to do with the saddle. And like you're saying, being 2 sticks high, sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes all you need is one stick and the platform just to be over that brush, because you got to figure, depending on where you're hunting at this point in time, there's nothing on the leaves. And if the brush is your cover. So you being up high, you might stick out a lot more compared to being a little bit lower to the ground.
Yeah. And that, honestly, that's one of my tactics during rifle season is I'll carry 2 sticks with me and a platform, and, got the saddle on, and I'll just take off walking. And if I find a spot that I like, I'll post up for a little bit. And I've killed several bucks doing that. And I think it just helps getting you up off the ground just so you could see a little bit better.
Yep.
Like, I know a lot of guys will take off walking like that and just sit on the ground or whatever like that. But man, you just can't see very well, and
Right.
having all your stuff in the tree with you, and it just, man, it's a freaking killer tactic for sure.
Yeah, I like that. So, you said that was one that you were really most proud of. Like, what was your takeaway as to like why that was one that really meant a lot to you?
Yeah, just going into a brand new spot. Like I'd never stepped foot on this place, and I picked that spot based on the wind and the surrounding, what was going on around it. I kind of predicted what the pressure was going to do to the deer and what they were going to do with the heavier wind and the cold. And man, it just worked out
Yeah.
absolutely perfect. I mean, yeah.
Can't beat that. Can't beat that, man. So here's the last question regarding that one. Did the wind actually do what it said it was going to do?
Yeah, it actually
Yeah.
did. Yeah. I mean, it was just ripping down that ridge the whole time. So, but yeah, that buck and that doe come out of that bottom. So I assume they were bedded down in there somewhere.
Right.
It's pretty thick down in there, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So to kind of reflect, Jared, on all your season, some key takeaways, maybe 1, 2, 3 takeaways from collective and I know you're still getting after right now with that, that one that's been a thorn in your butt and at home. But like, if that hunt, say your season ended tonight, what are you able to reflect on and take away from the season?
Yeah, just reading each situation. Like every hunt's so different. You can't go into it with the expectation that it's going to be just like it was yesterday. So just picking up on those little things, and basing your hunt around that. Even all these bucks that I killed, I had no idea they were there. I had never been in these spots before. Like I'm just figuring it out like as it happens in real time, and just being able to pick up on those little details, um, you know, based on the wind, based on cover. It's different in every situation, but then being aggressive enough, like with my calling, for instance, being aggressive with the calling, that made that hunt on the West Virginia buck. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a bunch of different things, honestly. And like the Indiana buck, pulling all my stuff out of the tree at 7:30 in the morning and moving, 50
Yeah.
yards. Just being confident in my setup enough to do that. Just reading the terrain and the surrounding cover, on Onyx, and just being confident, to go right in there and just hunt it like I've known it all my life. Just go in and just do it. So
Like hearing that, I'm taking that away is just, letting it rip. Like, don't leave anything out there, and that's the one aspect where even if Jared did not have success with 5 different bucks, and because I've been there, right? Like I personally struggled those last couple of years, like everything just seemed to work right this year, and you have those times. But when you are able to reflect and know that you're just letting it all out there and having fun, and you're able to take so much away from that. And that's what I like hearing that, like you said, switching spots and trusting yourself and just doing all those different things and having the success and knowing when your gun jams, staying calm, cool, and collected. And if that deer would have went up and ran away, okay, like you're gonna
yeah,
just move on to the next one or to the next spot. Like
right.
that's what it is.
Yeah, and don't. I think a lot of guys are just too careful.
Yeah.
They're just a little bit too careful. Go out and have fun with it and take some risks, because man, I'm telling you, that's when I kill. That's when I
Yeah.
kill the good ones, is when you take a risk where you're like, oh, I'm either going to blow him out or I'm going to kill him. And
Yeah.
if I blow him out, I'll move on to the next one, whatever.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
kind of the attitude you have to have. I mean, just go for broke. And I mean,
Yep.
I do that pretty much every sit. I mean,
Yeah.
I go for broke. If I screw it up, there'll be another one somewhere.
Yep. I mean, heck, even like some of those ones where, again, because it's documented, like with Maryland, like when those, just seeing how cool it was when you and Rob are up in the tree and those does caught your wind and they're just blowing it. You're like, okay, like That's deer hunting.
Yeah, yeah,
It was cool. We got on deer. You know what I mean? Like that's better than walking in there, like you said earlier on, 2 miles back, riding your bikes and trucking through all that, the hotness, the bugs, all that jazz,
yeah,
and going back there and being like, I didn't see anything. That's the worst.
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But
And I think another takeaway too is kind of pushing through, even though you have that stuff that goes wrong. Like I had, that buck in Indiana. I was pretty down on myself that evening because I thought that I'd lost that deer. And the next morning, I didn't want to go up or I didn't want to get up and go back in there. Like I just wanted to go somewhere else. I didn't even want to hunt. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back in there. I'm going to sit and observe and listen. And then I ended up finding that buck. And then, like the gun jams, whatever, this stuff's not easy to do. I mean, your public land, kind of doing it yourself, stuff's going to go wrong. Perfect example, and this is a hilarious story, and hopefully it won't take too long. But I went back to Maryland, like I said last week, and it was a total crap show. Like just it did not go well at all. Like I found a big buck. I'm pretty confident I could go in there and kill him if I could figure out how to get in there. But I almost got in the middle of a drug deal or something at 6 a.m. in the public land parking lot. That was sketchy as all get out. I ended up hiking into this spot blind, thinking, well, I've done it this many times this year. I'm going to do it again, go in blind on the side of this mountain and kill a big buck. So I went in probably a little overconfident in this situation. So I ended up finding a good set of buck tracks in the snow. I'm like, I'm going to snow track this buck and kill him. And like, this is going to be an epic end to the season, right? Not end up that way. Like I got back on the side of this mountain following this buck track, and I had pushed through a bunch of rhododendron that had like 6 inches of snow in. And I get back in there like a mile and a half and lost the buck track, found some great sign, like it was a good spot. But then I'm like, I don't know how to get out of here. So I need to find my way out in the daylight. Like I can't stay here till dark. So I ended up at the top of the mountain trying to go around this drainage, and it was nothing but rhododendron, like just as thick as like I could not get through it. Then I got up in the middle of that and I got cliffed out, cliffside that I couldn't get over. So I ended up backtracking a half mile and then just plowing through this rhododendron all the way to the truck. By the time I got back to the truck, I was like, I'm done. I'm not hunting public land ever again. This is the end.
Yeah. Oh man. That's rhododendron's the worst. I mean, it's like that, and we call it shit rock. Like when you have that and just shit rock all over the place, it's like
That's exactly what it was all that slanted, big, giant boulders covered in moss, and then then it had snow on top of it. Like it was not a fun time.
Yeah, no thanks. No thanks. That would have been the one where you'd been like, hey, Jeremy, you want to go hunt? I'd be like, yeah, sure, let's go do this, Jared. And I would have been like, really, Jared?
What would happen? Yep. So for everybody listening out there, just realize that I get myself into a lot of situations that people don't hear about. But I mean, you just got to laugh it off and keep going.
The drug deal one, that doesn't sound too fun.
Yeah, I still don't know what was going down there, but a brand new white Escalade, like pulling into a public land parking lot at 6 a.m. in the middle of nowhere. And then there was a Ford that pulled in behind them. The Escalade takes off. I'm like, what in the heck is going on? So this dude's sitting there in the truck, and I'm like, oh, maybe he's hunting. I'm going to go talk to him and see where he's going. I don't want to mess him up. So I walk over there, and he's like mid-50s, clean cut, real nice button-up shirt. I'm like, this ain't adding up. I'm like, hey, man, you headed back in here today? And he said, nope. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I'm hunting back here today. I didn't want to mess you up. I said, are you hunting today? He said, nope, just hanging out. I was like, all right, man, I'll catch you later. And I just packed up my stuff and I freaking took off. Yeah. I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but I don't want any part of it.
Yeah, that's definitely something was going on. No doubt about that one. So here's the kind of, man, Jared, congratulations, because I remember saying and having you say on the last time that you were on, you're like, man, what a year that I had that, the year that you killed your Iowa buck and you killed, what did you kill, 4 that year?
3 or 4, and then the year
Like,
before I killed 4 or 5. I don't know. Like
yeah,
it's been crazy. Yeah.
you've been going on a phenomenal streak the last couple of years, and you're like, man, I can't top it. Well, you did. So kind of to kind of two more things that I do want to ask you. It's not that they're not long, but like to kind of like wrap things up a little bit. Like, where do you go from here now?
Ah, man. I mean, I just want to keep doing what I've been doing, just
Yep.
picking new spots and new states and just going and just seeing what happens. Like I've got,
What intrigues you? Is there a place or anything that kind of really like gets that like that would be cool?
dude, Delaware's been popping up in my mind here lately. I don't know why. Like,
Well, that one that's an off-air discussion on that one.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's so many places, like even in Pennsylvania and Ohio, like I just don't have time to hunt them all. It's like I would be perfectly content just hunting, like, the tri-state area right here, and just, going on adventures like that, backpack hunts. Like I really, really want to get more into the backpack hunting type deal. Like where I shot that buck in PA, that would have been the perfect place for it. And I would have froze to death out there just the same as I did at the truck. So I might as well just slept in the woods.
Yeah.
So I want to get into more stuff like that.
That's awesome. So obviously you're up there with Tethrd, and you get a chance to try new things out before they come out and along those lines. But speaking of things that are out, what is I asked Rob the same question. What's your favorite Tethrd product?
Oh man. It's got to be the his strap. Like it's stupid simple, but like I can't imagine life without that thing.
So that's exactly what I said to Rob, and I kind of didn't really elaborate on it. I was just like, oh yeah, like you said, it's just so simple, stupid that it helps. So my second deer that I killed, which was like technically would have been that first week the first full week, and then that first Saturday, I should have just ran home and grabbed my backpack with my frame pack and went just back down in there and cut up the deer and, quartered her out and called it a day. But I was just too excited. I'm like, I'm dragging this deer out of here. It's not too bad. And I'm tripping over because it was an old clear cut. I'm tripping over all the stems that are still growing and everything like that. I'm pulling her out. It took like 3 hours to get her out of there. But finally, when I got her to the road, which earlier in the spring when I scouted this spot, the road was like dirt, whereas now they put down that little like gravel rock.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, dang, my bike, I wouldn't have actually been able to probably pedal up it. Like going down is fine because you have that momentum, but going back out, I would have had to push anyway, just because it was public land, so I can't use an e-bike there.
Yeah.
So I'm using my regular bike, and I have a Hawk little neck strap thing that like the drag, and it's a hard plastic. I hooked up my his strap to the front of my handlebars, and I wrapped it around and pulled it, made like a little cinch knot on the handle, and I just pushed like a sled. I sled pushed that bike and dragged that deer 900 yards on the road, dude, from the road to my truck, and then 300 yards from the road to the timber, and then it was about 400 yards from the timber to where I kill her. Yeah, dude, I was sore for like 3 days that day, but the his strap saved my life, and it was the same his strap that I used for the rest of the season. There was nothing wrong with it.
Dude, when I killed my buck in Iowa last year and I quartered him out, I didn't have a place to hang the quarters at camp. There was like a little oak tree about this big. I put the his strap on there. I had 105 pounds of deboned meat that I hung off of that his strap, and it held it just fine. Like it's impressive. It's the simplest thing, but man, I love that thing. It's awesome.
I'm with you on that, man. $27.99. Go get yourself a his strap. TethrDNation.com. I like it, man. Dude, Jared, I appreciate you so much. One, telling those awesome stories on here fires me up. Like I want to go hunting. I can't wait till after Christmas now, ready to get out for a late season. I'm gonna have baby number 2. My wife's gonna be in labor. I'm gonna be in a tree, and I'm gonna be the public enemy number 1. But that's all right.
Yeah, it's kind of winding down for me. I'm pretty happy with how the season ended, so I'm just good with whatever. I've been muzzleloader hunting a little bit, but
Yeah.
I don't know that late muzzleloader in Maryland. It's still tempting, but I just don't know how. I don't know if I need another adventure or not this year. Might just call it good.
So just because, again, I didn't really dissect the laws. Is it the western side of Maryland that you are able to rifle hunt?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the western side is rifle hunt. The eastern shore side is where you have to use the muzzle loader and stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
That's what I thought.
But I'm definitely not done in Maryland. Like I've got some real good intel from the cameras that I ran over there this year, and I've got some spots that I kind of know when they're good now. So I think I'll be in good shape for next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I listen. I know I was only there for like 2 days, basically hunting that, but that is a spot where I regret not really dissecting. This is the key takeaway. Don't be like me. Don't be like an idiot where I didn't really look at public land pieces. Like I was like, oh, I'm gonna go with my friend, and then obviously I have it here. And Chris Weiss, a good buddy of mine from Pennsylvania, he lives very close to the border on the western side of the Maryland units, basically, and he would constantly hunt it, after work because he's only half hour right there. Boom, 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 boom. And it didn't dawn on me where I'm like, dang, he's hunting Sunday. Like what private piece does he have access to? And then I sent him a couple waypoints. And I was like, hey, what about this one? He's like, oh, dude, that's not far from like where I hunt. Like that might be a really good location. Like get in there, get after it. He's like, you can hunt that on Sundays. I was just like, wait, what? You know what I mean? I was just, and here it is, like middle of October when I could have been going the last 4 or 5 weeks. Oops. I think like the past 4 weeks. I'm just like, you gotta be shitting me right now. Like I could have gone on some cool adventures, maybe killed a buck, and it's just so now next year I'm like, oh, for sure I'm getting the Maryland license just because now I know I could hunt this national area on a Sunday. So
it's hard to keep up with all that stuff when it's real hard for me. Like I have to be real diligent about keeping up on all the laws in all these states because man, it's tough.
I mean, for someone like you that is obviously creating awesome things for Tethrd, I mean, you're going to a bunch of different places where it's like PA, Ohio, and Maryland. But dude. Yeah. Well, Jared, listen, man, again, thank you. Congratulations on a phenomenal season. I appreciate you sharing those stories and your wisdom, and looking forward to catching up with you here hopefully catch up with you at the PA show, and as we're slinging some product at the Great American Outdoor Show. So be on the lookout for that, and some new cool things that will be coming down the pipeline from Tethrd, and the videos that Jared will be releasing, and everybody else from Tethrd. So Jared, man, I appreciate you coming on and doing that. Just where can people follow along and all that cool stuff?
Yeah, so most of the videos are, on Tethrd Nation. My Instagram's like @JShafe_30 or something like that. But all these bucks got all of them mostly on film. So there's going to be some good episodes coming out. I'm pretty excited about it. But dude, I appreciate you having me on. It's always a blast.
Absolutely, man. Well, everybody, go follow the Brett the Hitman Hart version of In Our Hunting World. The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. And that's why I guess now, like when you said you didn't really follow WWF back in the day, that was Bret Hart's thing. Just that's when that came on, I'm like, oh man, I gotta post that one on that image. So go give them a follow. Go watch those videos. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in this week. We'll see you next weekend. Antler Up.